Today I'm going to teach you the proper techniques to have you mastering the Slappy frontside and backside 50-50, as well as some common mistakes that people are making when doing these tricks that's holding them back so you don't make these mistakes on the way to mastering these tricks. For me personally, Slappy 50s were harder to learn, with Slappy crooks and feeble coming much easier. But now understanding the right techniques, I've found that these two tricks are essential for any skater that wants to know how to Slappy grind. And they're not just fun, they look really sick too when they're done properly. So before we get into the actual techniques, I want you to imagine that the curb you're about to Slappy grind is the world's smallest and steepest quarter pipe. This might sound completely ridiculous if you're hearing this for the first time, but looking at a curb this way really helps you understand the mechanics of a Slappy 50 and allows you to get up into it easier if you're imagining the curb this way. Now, with this in mind, let's get into the Slappy front 50 first, which for me was much harder to learn, and then we'll pretty much be doing the complete opposite for the Slappy backside 50s. So foot placement for both frontside and backside 50s, I like my front foot being on the top two bolts of my front truck and my back foot being on the bottom two bolts of the back truck. A common mistake people make is having their feet on the kicks, which I'll get into why that's completely wrong later, but this is how I like to have my foot placement for Slappy grinds. You want to approach the curb with a moderate speed, if anything a little bit faster than normal, because once you Slappy into it, you're going to take a lot of impact into the curb, which will reduce your speed a little bit. So the faster the better, really. Now I like to come at a 45-degree angle, but instead of coming as one arc, I kind of approach it with a bit of an S carve into it, rather than just coming into one oval movement. This just helps me figure out the timing and get into it a little easier. So it's a bit of an S carve. So the biggest key to think about as you're approaching the world's tiniest quarter pipe, you want to push your heels down and toes up as you approach the curb, which is going to allow your front toe side wheel to roll up the curb, up into that 50-50 there. This is the easier part. A lot of people can get their front truck in, but getting the back truck in is the harder part. So it's like a two-step movement. First step is what I just said, heels down, toes up, let the front toe side wheel roll up the curb. At the same time as this truck is making contact, you're pushing your back foot forward with your toes up still and almost doing a power slide push forward movement to get that up. For me, my toe side lock-in starts first and then it shifts up into a proper heel side 50-50. This technique is a lot harder than what it seems when you're actually trying to put it into motion, especially with the two-step where your front truck has to hit before the back truck. But the main thing to think about is keeping those heels down, which allows both of the wheels to roll up. And once the toe side wheel is coming up to the top of your front truck, making sure you really push this back foot forward and keep your toes up to allow it to get up into the 50. I can't stress enough how much that little power slide movement to get your back truck up in is so important. If you've seen people try this trick, a lot of the time they can get their front one up properly, so they do the right technique with the front truck, but they can't get their back truck up in time, so they end up getting into a frontside wheelie grind. So heels down, toes up, and power sliding that back foot up into it is going to be the key for this one. And then all of the hard work is done there, so you just have to stand up, grind, and then drop off wherever you want. So the reason I say imagine it's a small quarter pipe, because you can treat a 50-50 on a quarter pipe the same way. Imagine if it's a steep quarter, you're going to have your weight back, you're going to have your toes pointing up as you try and get up into the 50. So if you think about this as being the world's smallest quarter pipe, it kind of just unlocks something in your brain to make it understand a little bit more. So I'll do a few more Slappy front 50s from different angles so you can see exactly how this technique works and the timing of that two-step motion. And then we'll get into the backside 50-50. Now the Slappy back 50 was much easier for me to learn because I already learned how to Slappy crook first. So getting that front truck up into the wall helped me with the back 50, because then all I had to do is push that back truck in. But with this one, we're pretty much going to do the complete opposite to the front side 50-50. So same foot placement, same speed, same angle carve in, but instead of going at the curb with your heels down and your toes up, you're going to push your toes down and lift your heels up. So as you're approaching the curb, or the world's smallest quarter pipe, pushing your toes down and lifting your heels up is going to allow your heel side wheel to roll up the curb and get that front truck up on top of the 50. Just like the front 50, this is the easiest part as you tilt your toes down, lift your heels up and roll that up. And the harder part is trying to get the back truck up on top of the ledge. So another common thing that happens is people can't get their back truck up, so they end up slapping up, missing the back truck and just getting into a wheelie grind. So if we're taking the same technique to the Slappy front 50 but flipping it over, once you get the front truck in, the toes down, heel side wheel rolls up, you're almost doing a little revert scoop backwards, keeping your toes down on the back foot, heels up, as you push it back and up and into it. So you're gonna get a heel side lock in first, and then eventually that will slide up and in on top of the ledge because of the momentum of the angle you're coming at. So once again, that technique is so important to give your back foot a little scoop revert up into it, but keeping your toes down to allow your heel side wheel to still roll up as you're pushing your back foot up and into it. This technique is definitely easier said than done, and it took me a while to get that back chuck in. I was one of those guys that was doing slappy willy grinds, and sometimes I still miss it and get into a slappy willy grind, unintentionally of course. But throughout both slappy front and back 50s, it's a similar concept. You push your heels down and lift your toes up to get into the front side, toes down, heels up to get into the back side. The first truck is easy, but getting the back one is where that two-step technique will come in to scoop up into it, or for the front 50, you need heels down and push into it. So like the front 50, there's no extra work to do once you get both trucks in, because the angle you're coming at will get you up into that. But if anything, if you're still picturing it like the world's smallest quarter pipe, you want to keep your weight either on top or just inside, because a lot of people, especially for the back 50, they lean so hard on their toes to get up, and then once they stand up, their weight goes above and they end up going into a feeble or just coming out of the grind completely. So you still want to stay kind of centered or inside of the curb to allow you to grind and then pop off whenever you're ready to pop off. So as you can see, they're super similar, but you just flip the heel toe ratio for front side or back side. Foot placement's the same, angle's the same, speed's the same, but I'll get into some more slappy backside 50-50s from different angles so you can see this two-step motion in practice. And then we'll go over the common mistakes people are making when they're trying to learn these two tricks. So I touched on a few of these already, but the 4 common mistakes that people make when they're learning slappy grinds is having their feet on the kicks. The whole point of a slappy is to almost war ride and bash up into it, almost like you're skating that tiny little quarter pipe. So you're not lifting up into the grind, and if you're using this heel toe ratio movement properly, then having your feet over the trucks is how you're going to control that the easiest. Imagine if both feet are on the edges of the kicks and you're trying to push your heels down to allow your toe side wheels to go up. It's just not going to work as well as having them over the truck. So foot placement is the biggest thing I see that people do wrong, which leads me into the next thing that people are doing wrong, which people aren't slappying. They're not pushing their heels down and allowing the wheel to roll up onto the grind. They're lifting their front truck up into it. So lifting up is obviously not a slappy, you're just lifting up into a 50-50. But if you have your foot placement correctly, you won't be able to lift up into it either. So that's why the foot placement is so important. These mistakes apply for both front side and back side. I'm just demonstrating it on the front side 50-50. But the third biggest mistake I make, which I kind of mentioned already, is people going too slow. Now the art of a slappy is riding up the wall, which creates a lot of friction, and then once you grab into the grind, it's also a little bit more friction there until you're up on top grinding. So the slower you go, the more speed you're going to lose throughout that motion of the slappy. So a lot of people I see doing slappies, they're going too slow. If they manage to get up and into it, they just stop because they're not going fast enough to get through the slappy technique and then start grinding. That's why I said you need to go a little bit faster than what feels normal to you. Obviously it's scary and it's hard to get this two-step technique down, so you can start off slow, working up your speed as you go, as you get more confident with the technique, but eventually you want to work up to going at a pretty decent speed to get up into the slappy and then continue grinding. The best slappies I've ever seen are going almost full speed. It just looks cool and it sounds cool too. And the final mistake, which I did mention as well, is people aren't able to get their back truck in properly. So the first truck, they got the technique down, heels down, toe side wheel going up, but then they can't get that push forward power slide movement to get up into it. So a lot of people are doing slappy willy grinds when they're trying to slappy 50. But the key to overcoming that is really thinking about doing a power slide with your back foot. So on the front 50, your heel's already down. You want to push your heel forward into the curb and then allow that to slap up into the grind. On the back 50, your toes are already down, so you want to drag your toe backwards, almost like you're doing a little scoop revert, and that'll allow that heel side wheel to roll up into the 50 as well. So all of these techniques are going to battle the mistakes people make, and this is going to help you master the slappy frontside and backside 50-50. So they are all the techniques that you need to put in place and all of the mistakes to avoid to master the slappy frontside and backside 50-50. Obviously take it slow, go a little slower to learn that technique, because personally for me, these were really hard to learn at first, especially spending years ollieing into your grind. Slappies just feel so wrong at first. It's such a natural response for you to want to lift up into the grind, but the key is to keep your foot placement over over the bolts, use your heels and toes to ride up into the grind. And either pushing your back foot forward into the curb or sliding it back up into the curb to get that back chuck in so you're not doing slappy willy grinds. But mastering these tricks makes skateboarding so much more fun, and it adds to the bag of tricks that you guys already have. So I really hope these techniques help you guys. This is the proper way to master slappy front and back 50s. Hopefully this will take a lot of time out of the process of you trying to learn it, because I kind of learned these by myself and it took me so long to get these techniques down. So start off slow, have fun with it, go out there, do some slappies, and check out the slappy crook video I did right here.